Now we're ready for the masterclass on building trust in teams. So we're starting with what is trust, and I'm not going to give you a lengthy definition here because I know that you all know what trust is. What I want to do is describe it in simple terms because we know when we have trust and we also know when it's missing. It's what we call an intangible in business. It's very hard to measure trust, and it can be something that we take for granted. It's much more obvious when it's missing in team. So what I'm going to show you today is going to focus you on the link between trust, culture, and the results your team or organization will achieve. And it's going to enable you to build trust deliberately and intentionally in your team. So that's what I want you to come away with at the end of today. And I'm going to focus on three things. I'm going to focus on how to read the signs, so when trust is present and when trust is absent. I'm going to show you why trust is essential in building a high-performing team and a high-performing workplace. And I'm going to show you how to skillfully and deliberately build trust so that you don't leave it to chance, because so many people do leave it to chance. So this is why we need to look at our skills and our behaviors and elements of our character to know how to build trust in a deliberate and intentional way. Remember, you don't want to leave it to chance or to your instinctive patterning, because that is likely to work against you. And it is a combination of skill and character. And it starts with self-trust. So trust starts with our level of self-trust. We all have our own patterning about trust that's come from our life experiences. And it's very important to be aware of this, because this is what we bring into our relationships at home and at work. So it's that sense of, do I trust myself? And this comes from keeping your word to yourself. It comes from believing in yourself, knowing what your strengths are, and knowing that we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and believing in yourself. It also comes from following through with your goals. I want you to be careful about how many times you say you're going to do something and then not doing that. Don't say you're going to do it if you're not. Don't get into the habit of doing that, because that can break your self-trust. Self-trust is very important. I want you to treat yourself with as much love and respect as you would someone else. This is very important for self-trust. The next thing is self-awareness, and you know how valuable this is. I've talked to you a lot about this in the Great Managers program and how essential this skill is. To build trust, you need to be self-aware. You need to know yourself. You need to be tuned in to yourself and others. If you're not tuned in, you're not going to be aware of how other people are experiencing you. Are you being authentic? Are you tuning in to your intentions? That sort of thing. Trust also comes from your values. Are you living your values? Values like respect and integrity are essential for trust. So remember, we're always classifying the environment. Is this person friend or foe? And when we're living our values, we tend to be congruent. So people are more likely to trust us. So are you living your values? Are you clear on your values? You want to be someone that other people can trust, and that will help with that. The next skill of self-management is essential as well. This is about emotions and managing emotions. And if you're not managing your emotions, you can be creating an environment that's not safe for people. So it's being able to respond to situations rather than react. And it also means allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Patrick Lencioni talks about this in his book, how trust means we can allow ourselves to be vulnerable and not get those instinctive patterning kicking in and taking us out. There's always a little bit of risk associated with trust, and knowing that that feeling of vulnerability will kick in, it's normal, and being able to override that instinctive reaction. There's an understanding here that out of control emotions destroy trust for yourself and for others. And the other important thing here is that it's that little bit of risk taking, that you've actually got to give trust to get trust. That's a very important part of being a leader. You have to give trust to get trust. If you're waiting for people to prove themselves trustworthy, you're actually looking for ways not to trust them because of the way our brains classify. Threat is our default, remember. So remember, emotions are contagious and your emotional tone will set the tone for the team. The next part of building trust is your quality communication. It's about sending clear messages, making sure that your messages are understood, and listening attentively, listening with the intent to understand. It's also about congruency, that your verbal and non-verbal messages are lined up. Being aware of what you're doing with your facial expressions and your gestures and things like that, very important. And being able to talk straight in a skillful way. It's about being able to give honest feedback and coming from the place of helping people grow rather than being punitive or punishing in your approach. And I'm working in an organisation at the moment where their environment is very punishing. So people are very defensive and they're not aware of this. It's part of the environment there that's been created. So there's a bit of work to do there to override that as well. So trust involves interpersonal engagement. It's about connection and relatedness. And then as a leader, you must role model trust. It's very important that you step into your leadership. Your team wants you to lead. They're looking for you to lead. So it sets clear expectations for the team about results and about behaviours, about your standards in the team, what you expect. Be clear and open about this. And make sure you right any wrongs. Don't let things escalate. Don't let things fester. Don't tolerate behaviours that go against your values or your code of conduct. That's very important for trust. People are watching what you do. You're on show as the leader. So it's very important that you behave respectfully. You've heard the expression walk the talk. It's also important around results that you're delivering results, because if you don't, they won't. It's important that you're encouraging learning and improvement. So if people aren't making the grade or to your standards, like what's next? How do we move? It's that learning approach, that continuous improvement approach. It's important that you keep your commitments, very important. And if you can't keep them, you're communicating with people. You're practicing accountability. You're setting up systems for accountability. This is about your reputation and your track record. That is a very important element of trust in your teams. I want you to be a person of credibility, and I know you are, I know you can be, but it's about being conscious about that as well, thinking about what you're doing there. So let's look at some simple trust builders you can do in your team.